Conversion therapy is any attempt to change one's sexual or gender identity through spiritual or psychological intervention. It can take many, many forms, and all of them are proven to be harmful.
Homosexuals can change, and that's what we do here.
Our clients notice decreases in their same-sex attractions and increases in their heterosexual attractions.
Regardless of what science says, change of behavior is always possible.
The world is designed for male and female. It's not homophobia, it's just that's the way things are.
We are created beings whose creator has a specific intention for our existence and our behavior.
I left a transgender lifestyle.
I came out of homosexuality. I'm a former homosexual.
Former homosexual.
Former lesbian. Former lesbian.
Former bisexual.
Former homosexual.
And I have changed.
Will you get big?
Yes.
You'd like to have one too?
Yes, right boy.
Oh my goodness. Oh, I could not do that now. That was not graceful.
Stuck the landing.
I was very young and gay in the happy sense.
I think that's all.
It was in the summer of 2018 when I started making this documentary. It started with a phone call with my mom. She was asking me about my experience with conversion therapy. A family friend of ours, a son of theirs who I knew, apparently had come out as gay, and we're trying to figure out what to do. It was recommended that he go see the same organization that I had been a part of. I was horrified, honestly. Like, nearly 10 years had gone by, and I thought for sure they had been shut down.
Seeing how conversion therapy affected you negatively, and I can see that transition. I can see that difference between like the little kid and you when I met you and you now. I remember the rubber band on your wrist that you used, but like you had to keep it so secret. I didn't really even know what was going on, which I think is crazy.
Just ever since finding out that my old conversion therapist is still practicing, like, I really just want to meet other people who have gone through the same things. I didn't necessarily want to tell my story, but I feel like I have to.
Gonna ride that bike, Zach?
Yep. When I try to pull forward, it goes back.
No, you gotta push forward so you're putting on the brakes. Push down.
It's hard to know, like, when exactly I knew I was gay because I didn't have words to describe it. When you're young and like your guy friends are interested in being friends, you know, when you're in elementary school and girls are gross and have cooties or whatever, like I was very comfortable in those stages. Then I think when I became hyper aware of it was when all my other friends became interested in girls. And I didn't.
It was all in the double-digit club.
I remember having some conversations with my cousin, probably when I was 10 or 11. And I remember even him telling me, like, oh, you're probably just gay. And I was like, no, that can't be right. Because I knew the connotation of that. I remember from a very early age at church and hearing, you know, Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. It was very obvious from a very young age that, like, that was not acceptable. I did know the Bible very well, and I remember I would, like, scour it looking for verses and trying to, like, figure things out about myself, and was pretty discouraged by what I found. And so I had this feeling that, like, I am secretly the worst person in the room. It was scary being in the closet, but it also was safe. It was what I knew. But I was constantly living in fear. And I think there was also a part of me that didn't want to be there. Like I wanted people to know because I felt like it was inevitable that they would know eventually.
So this book I remember someone giving to me. I was given this book closer to when I was coming out, so I don't think I read all that much of it. This book is a spiritual friendship, and basically, like, this is the idea that you need to have close male friends that will then, like, take the place of romantic connections. But this book, Desires in Conflict, is probably one of the books that I went through the most. It's written by Joe Dallas. I probably read this book 5 or 6 times at least. These were other books that they're not really ex-gay related. But this thing is one of the things I didn't even realize that I still had. So I went to an Exodus International conference, and this was my workbook.
Focus on the family.
Yeah, Focus on the Family was a part of this. These are some of the speakers.
Oh, this is pre-Alan Chambers coming out.
Oh yeah, this was way before.
Around 600 people showed up for the Love One Out conference, which is aimed at helping parents understand homosexual children.
We're trying to help those parents with how to better love their son or daughter without condoning homosexual behavior. And then we're also offering hope to people who are dissatisfied living homosexually, that this is a struggle that can be overcome.
We were in a van. We had driven 7 or 8 hours from Lexington, Kentucky to Birmingham, Alabama.
Thank you for taking the time to come out and address one of the most pressing and difficult issues the church is facing today. It is impossible to take a clear position on homosexuality without offending someone. People come at this topic.
I remember on the way in, we passed all these LGBT people holding signs that said, like, God loves you, you are perfect.
They only got one word right, love. And there's nothing in love but what they're doing. Love
and I remember being so fucking angry at them. If they could just be gay, they could just accept and love themselves, like it could be that easy. Like, I was working so hard to be right before God. And I thought they were cowards.
Your body is going to decay. You are going to
Love
die.
One Out was much slicker than other ex-gay programs. It was poll tested. They had focus groups. They had excellent professional speakers. It was slick. They had lights. They had great graphics. It was fantastic, except for the fact it was destroying lives. Amazingly, conversion therapy is still going on. People find out their child is gay, and because of their religious beliefs, they believe they want to change them so their child could get into heaven. And they will take extraordinary measures. Unfortunately, it's destructive, it's a dead end, and it leads to nowhere but despair.
Christians have been obsessed with sex for a very long time. But I think it's important to realize that conversion therapy itself doesn't have origins within conservative Christianity, but rather within psychotherapy. Psychotherapy develops in the early 20th century, and in the United States in particular becomes quite conservative, especially after World War II.
CBS News survey shows that 2 out of 3 Americans look upon homosexuals with disgust, discomfort, or fear. 1 out of 10 says hatred.
Psychoanalysts would often go to very great lengths, really extreme measures, to try to change or reorient someone that they believed had deviated from a sexual norm. So these were mostly men.
This involved showing the gay man pictures of nude males and shocking him with a strong electric current. Over a short period of time, he will be unable to get sexually aroused to the pictures. And hopefully, he will be unable to get sexually aroused outside in other settings as well.
In 1970, gay rights activists actually protested the American Psychiatric Association's annual convention for including homosexuality as a mental disorder. And 3 years later, that was removed from the DSM.
That exact same year, 1973, the first modern U.S. ex-gay ministry was founded in San Rafael, California, called Love in Action.
Love in Action is a ministry that helps homosexuals to leave the homosexual lifestyle behind. About 90 to 95% of the people we minister to are people that have accepted Christ as their Savior and are just really struggling with this one area of sin in their life.
1976, another ministry started called Exit with Michael Bussey and Gary Cooper in Los Angeles. And it was in a big church called Melodyland next to Disneyland. And they had a lot of hotlines to help people as part of this charismatic Jesus movement with name it and claim it theology. You say, I want a car, I want to be rich, and you name it, and then it's supposed to come to you. And the same could be said with healing cancer, with blindness, and of course, homosexuality. Michael Bussey, who was gay at the time, was volunteering for a suicide hotline, and he told one of his coworkers he was gay, and the guy goes, no, you're not gay, you're ex-gay. And they told him to start an ex-gay ministry to help people name it and claim it and get out of there. Michael Bussey and Gary Cooper brought all the little ministries that came together about that time, and they started Exodus International.
Exodus International is a worldwide coalition of ministries offering Christ-centered support to men and women seeking freedom from homosexuality. One of our main goals is to not offer support ourselves, but to unify and equip the worldwide church to effectively reach out to this area of need.
Let's begin this morning by looking at male homosexuality. We have two primary goals today, the goal of insight and the goal of equipping.
So, understanding male homosexuality. Here we go. Homosexuality is a term with a threefold application.
It can refer either to orientation, behavior, or identity.
The homosexual condition is involuntary. The homosexual condition usually appears early in life and is deeply ingrained.
That is to say, people do not choose to be attracted to the same sex.
There's homosexuality behavior, and then there's homosexual identity. So they would say that, like, the first one is not necessarily a sin, but the second two
is
are.
a choice, isn't it? I would agree with those who say, hey, I did not ask to feel this way. I did not choose these feelings. Fair enough. But I would disagree with those who say, and therefore I inevitably have to act on these feelings. Honestly, all of us make...
Here's a C.S. Lewis quote.
The place for which he designs human beings in, his scheme of things, is the place they are made for. When we want to be something other than the thing God wants us to be, we must be wanting what, in fact, will not make us happy.
I'm producing a documentary, and I'm reaching out to other survivors of conversion therapy. As a survivor myself, I know how hard talking about this stuff can be, but I wanted to see if you would be willing to share your story. This is a personal project to me, and I'd love to have you be a part of it.
I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky. My dad is a pastor, a builder, man's man, football player. His dad was an evangelist who traveled the world opening churches. My grandmother played the organ for him. My family knew I was gay. Like, you can look at a photo of me as a baby, and there is no denying that that baby is homosexual. He's so sweet, he's so flamboyant, like, this boy is gay. And growing up, I always heard about how homosexuality was wrong. Like, that is the first thing I remember of, like, a no. As a toddler, as a young little kid, I knew that homosexuality was wrong. Why was I hearing this? Because they knew. For 20 years, I was living my own personal hell, trying to navigate finding acceptance from my family, find acceptance from who I'm supposed to be with my peers. I would date a guy, freak out, and have all of the Christian guilt. Oh my God, I'm going to hell. And then I would be like, I'm straight. I'm sorry. So I wasn't meshing. People thought I was fucking nuts because I just couldn't keep myself straight. So here's Dustin, who's straight one day, gay the next, like crazy. But they didn't understand what I was going through.
Then we have a whole bit on understanding female homosexuality. Women's sexuality can be fluid.
So wait, women's sexuality can be fluid, but men's cannot?
I don't know. I think in general, the church tends to think that female sexuality is not really a thing. Lesbianism is a complex condition. They are often common roots, although each woman's experience is unique.
I think every person who comes out later in life, we affectionately call ourselves the late bloomers. We can look back with 20/20 vision and see like, oh, that was a hint, and oh, that was another hint. But none of that becomes obvious until you get smacked over the head with your sexuality, right? At 20, I got married. By 30, I'd had 4 kids. We had a great friendship and a great marriage. We knew how to be the best Mormons. We knew how to be the best volunteers. We literally lived in a neighborhood in Arizona that has green grass in all the front yards, and mailboxes, and tall trees. And that was what I thought would make me absolutely happy. But my youngest went off to school, and all of a sudden I had 6 hours a day to think for myself. And I was having these crazy thoughts, like, I don't actually like my life, which couldn't have been a possibility because I had worked so hard for so long to create that life. So I had to get away from those thoughts. I joined a gym, made all these great friends, lifting more and weighing less, but it still left a lot of time to hear those thoughts that I didn't actually like my life. I started running a lot, training for marathons and half marathons. And my running coach was also a fly fisher. And so I started learning and taking lessons and going to club meetings. And for the first time, not weightlifting and not running, I was feeling connected to my body again. I would be standing in a river, making those casts. And it's such a technical sport that you can't think about anything else. You're just so present. And that was the first time I'd felt so centered and so grounded and so me for so long. Which really opened my heart up, and so I was very open to connecting. And that's when I met her. I formed this friendship with a woman, and I'd had friendships with women through my whole life, but it just happened in all the right ways that I kind of lost my heart to her. And I was really convincing myself that, oh, this is just the joy of like a new friend. And then a new really close friend. That's awesome, because that's really hard to come by in your 30s, right? And then to realize like, no, I'm actually really attracted to her. When you're just friends, you don't figure out how to sit next to each other on the couch. That's not a just friends kind of thing to do. I had convinced myself that I didn't like to cuddle, I didn't like intimacy, I didn't like holding hands. Like, I just thought that's who I was. And then to realize at 37, no, I actually really like that stuff, but just in a certain context. I hated myself. I was already not happy, right? And not realizing that I was having serious anxiety issues. But I really thought, I'm just not praying enough. I'm not reading my scriptures enough. I'm not going to the temple enough. Like, if you have problems, that's why. The problem is you. You're not living worthy of God's blessings.
When I was, I believe, a sophomore in high school, I got called down to the office. My mom picked me up from school. I went home and my dad was very upset. And I just kept asking what was wrong, and my dad asked me if I was gay. I said no, I wasn't. He started reading this printed list of internet sites. I remember how like ashamed they both felt and looked.
I was home for spring break my sophomore year of college. I was 20, crying in my bedroom, and I did cry out to God. I cried out to the universe, and I said, I can't do this anymore. I need a change in my life. I want to be happy. I want a real life. I woke up the next morning to my mom knocking on the door. She's like, you need to come downstairs, we have to talk. And I was like, about what? And she's like, your dad found something on your computer. I'm like, oh. And then I was like, oh, wow, we're doing this today. I took this moment as my moment to be completely honest and transparent about everything in my life.
My husband recognized what was happening. And so I had to confess to my bishop. In the Mormon church, everything about your membership is based on your worthiness. And so, of course, I was immediately declared unworthy. I wasn't able to teach a Sunday school class or pray in public or take the sacrament on Sundays. You know, the stakes get really high because the point of taking the sacrament on Sundays is to renew your baptismal covenants. So if you die before you've been able to renew your baptismal covenants, you're not going to heaven. So I looked for someone who could fix that, who could make me love my life, help me love my life.
They were very upset that I came out as homosexual. But the thing that really set them off was I came clean about an incident that happened when I was 12 at a mall in southern Indiana. I was raped. So I was really afraid that by coming out to them, they would disown me. But they did quite the opposite, and they overloved me. They thought that possibly from my rape, I was possessed by a gay demon that made me this way, and they wanted to fix the situation on their conditions. So I agreed. I heard them out. We went to their new church they were going to, and I went through an exorcism to get rid of this gay demon.
The next day after school, I was brought into this guy's office who was a counselor at our church. He said I had legitimate needs that weren't being met, and that homosexuality was an illegitimate way to meet a legitimate need, and that we had to uncover what those legitimate needs that weren't being met were.
So I found a therapist who said, yeah, this isn't hard. Something happened to you in your childhood that made you think that you're attracted to women, and we're just gonna find that.
And once we talked about any past trauma that I'd had,
we're gonna heal that trauma, and then you won't be attracted to women anymore.
My needs would be met, so I wouldn't need to use homosexuality as a crutch to get through life.
So I walked in, and he has this couch that's like covered in books and notepads and stuff, and he was sitting there, and then there was this leather chair that could recline. And so he said, I use this process, we do a breathing technique, and it gets you into this different mental state, and we're able to go back through your memories, find the event, and heal it. And it shouldn't take very long, maybe a month. We just gotta find the right event. And so my first day, I kicked that recliner back and went through the breathing process. And I wouldn't say it gets you like into a hypnotic state, but it definitely gets you to a state where memories become very clear. He walked me back to this memory of when I was 10, and it was just a benign memory, but to go through that and experience like, oh, I remember what my dad was wearing, and I remember what I ate that day, and I remember what it felt like when the rain came that day. Like, it really proved to me like, okay, there's some validity here. Like maybe we can do this.
When I think back on it, I don't think of it as like individual sessions. It honestly just feels like one long 4-year session.
I was referred to this place called Abba's Delight,
which in Greek translates to Daddy's Delight. It was an affiliate of the Hope for Wholeness Network. On the first day, I met my conversion therapist. I remember him smiling at me and saying, like, they don't understand people like us. The ironic part is that he was one of the first people to ever affirm my sexuality. Early on, I loved him for that. He told me that I wasn't weird. He told me that I was misguided and that I needed to change, but that everything was going to be okay. Everyone else looked at me like I had 3 heads. He would always start by asking me how my sexual sobriety was going. And then, depending on what happened that week, we would talk about that. He was very much about, he liked talking about sexual stuff. I remember one time in particular, he was asking me about like sexual fantasies, not just like describing like what are your sexual fantasies, but like what type of guy are you interested in? What do they look like? What is their hair color, hair length, build, dick size, ball size, the amount of pubic hair, every little detail. And I remember asking like, why are we talking about this? And he said, like, if you hold these desires inside, Satan can use them against you. But when you speak them out loud, that power is gone. But that wasn't what I experienced. What I experienced was feeling like I was sharing these almost erotic stories with someone who clearly was getting enjoyment out of them. I mean, I remember there were times where he got a boner during our sessions. And I remember talking to other people in the church. Didn't really felt like anyone ever believed me because I was the one who was messed up, not him. He was the one who was the success story, not me. So I just needed to trust the process and trust him. It was just my perception. I was wrong. And then he started asking me questions about people who I had been with or messed around with, asking me to describe their bodies, asking me to describe my body. He always told me, like, when you're horny at night and feeling these thoughts, you need to call me so I can, like, guide you through the process of, like, becoming not horny anymore. It became very disturbing to me.
So I went for a month and then 2. He was like, I don't think we found the event yet. So I was getting really angry with myself. I must not be working hard enough. I must not be trying hard enough. And the therapist was telling me, you're not telling me everything. Like, there must be something else. So 2 months in, I put words to an experience I'd had when I was 15 that I hadn't talked about with anyone. Not my parents, not the police, not my husband, no one. I had been invited to a friend's house and had no idea that I had walked into essentially an ambush of 3 teenage boys. And as soon as my therapist heard that, he was like, that's it. This is what did it. This is what made you think you're gay. We're gonna heal this, and then it'll go away. So for the next 4 months, I relived that day so many times. So many times. Which I can see that it is a legit therapy method to bring back a memory and process it and deal with it and rework the ending. Unfortunately, the end goal of doing that was not healing necessarily. It was to make me straight again. And so keep doing it. Keep doing it. Keep reliving that moment until you aren't attracted to this woman anymore. You know, and I would get up in the morning and get the kids off to school, go do my workouts, go to therapy, go over and over and over and over that story, come home exhausted, pick the kids up from school, do their homework, do their dinner, do the laundry, do the dishes, start all over again the next day.
I remember my therapist introducing me to the concept of a rubber band.
The rubber band was almost symbolic. It was the idea that any time you had a thought, you were to inflict some sort of physical pain or sensation on yourself as a reminder that this was not okay, and to like rip yourself out of that mindset. But the problem is when you are trying not to think about something, the more you think about it. I quickly became aware that I felt like this was not something that was ever going to change. And maybe this does work for some people, but I'm too far gone. I'm too messed up. I was given a list of things that I was told that I was: sexual deviant, homosexual, idolater, chronic masturbator, pornography addict. And I had to go and confess these things to men in my life, my boss, my youth group leader, several of my pastors, my English teacher. And what I didn't know was that my therapist had already gone ahead and like talked to all these people ahead of time to kind of let them know that this conversation was coming. And they all just kind of would shake their head and be like, that's really messed up, but like, I believe in you and you can change and you can be a good person. It was very humiliating. I was on staff at the church at the time, working part-time in the media department and part-time on the maintenance crew. I had been caught looking at porn again. And so I was told that like, okay, clearly what we're doing isn't working. That was when I was asked to go and confess to the elders of the church. And I was told that like, if I didn't do this, I would lose my job. They actually made me withdraw from Boy Scouts. I had just gotten my Eagle Scout rank at the time. I was told that it wasn't healthy for me to be around boys. Boy Scouts was also where I had a lot of my friends, and so I just had to leave, and I couldn't talk to any of them anymore. When I was 12, 13 years old, 14, going into 15, if you ask my mom about it, she's like, oh yeah, that's when you became an introvert. People don't become introverts when they're 14 or 15.
But I heard him exclaim, or he drove out of sight, Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night. Yay!
When I was 3 or 4 years old, I didn't know a stranger. I went on a trip to Washington, D.C., and I was singing songs in the subway with a dog nose on. I just loved to perform and to express myself, to dance, to sing, to laugh. You don't just become an introvert at 14 years old. Like, you become ashamed of yourself because you're told that who you are is wrong.
If you repeat a lie long enough, people begin to believe it. People believe that homosexuality is innate, it's biologically determined. There's no evidence for it. There is suggestive evidence, but there's no conclusive evidence.
A Los Angeles psychologist applies secular therapy to the same objective, change for those who seek it.
We work with 135 cases a week ongoing, and I can tell you people do change.
About 18 years ago or so, Dr. Joseph Nicolosi, a psychologist in the Southern California area, released a book called Reparative Therapy of Male Homosexuality. Dr. Nicolosi was a part of the Love One Out team. He has contributed significantly to our work, and so I'm going to...
Conversion therapy has many models and uses language that sounds scientific, psychological, to talk about the process by which we all develop sexual and gender identities. There are particular theories about when things, quote unquote, go wrong.
While they are looking for a gay gene, there's much more scientific evidence for what we call the classic triadic family dynamic. In one corner, you have the over-involved, intrusive, domineering mother. In the other triangle, you have the distant, detached father. And then in the other triangle, you have the temperamentally sensitive, introverted, artistic boy. This temperament is influenced by the mother-father family relationship and pushes this boy from temperamental sensitivity to same-sex attraction. The fact is this: if you do not traumatize a child, he will be heterosexual. That's the reality of it. But it's our responsibility as parents and as educators to take these children and direct them toward their natural, biologically determined gender, which is heterosexuality.
Conversion therapy today is best considered a fringe science, but its hold and its traction for evangelical Christians is that as believers that God created the human body, mind, and spirit, it's a logical extension to believe scientific claims that support their religious beliefs, of course, would be grounded in truth. So I think conversion therapy supports all the things that they already believe to be true when it comes to gender and sexuality.
I can tell you that for the client who does bring a religious dimension to it, who brings God into the problem, the transformation is deeper and more profound.
If somebody isn't steeped in it, it's very easy to trick people into believing this is real. These are experts when they're just extremists.
Gay is an inauthentic identity. That is a simple answer for a complicated psychological problem. That's why to be gay is to be anti-intellectual.
It's not science, it's stereotypes.
I remember years ago when I first started this work, the guy with the homosexual problem would come in. He would be very self-conscious and very meek, and a heterosexual guy would come in with whatever problem, and he'd walk in, plop himself in the chair and talk. And then the next homosexual client would come in nervous and self-conscious. It took me 30 years to figure out that is homosexuality. It's constricted, it's self-conscious.
But if you don't know and you're terrified your child's gay and you grew up in a religious household, you're going to believe these people, and they're good at posing as experts. They dress like experts, they speak like experts, but they're not. They have an agenda.
And for me, what I've learned in my process and my journey out of homosexuality, that it was really less about making me straight, less about changing my temptations, and more about God making me like Him. I might be tempted in some way or another for the rest of my life, but those temptations no longer define who I am.
Exactly. And, you know, we do still have struggles from time to time. You know, it really depends upon, you know, what kind of day, what kind of week am I having? This journey, it's all about a decision each day, but it starts with that first decision.
And the decision really is yours to be involved in homosexuality or to leave it behind.
In conversion therapy, any outcome can be perceived as sort of a path on the journey, that there is no end point. What's important to keep in mind there is that this is in part how conversion therapists remain in business. So it's a model that depends on the problem that it claims to solve, and thus can just be a sort of never-ending industry that continues and still has life.
After I came out to my family, I went through an exorcism. I was an adult. I agreed to everything that I went through because I was so broken. Any option that was thrown at me, I would have been yes. If this is gonna find my family's acceptance and love. Let's do it. If this is going to fix me, I'm there. Just want to always be very clear that I agreed and I wanted it, and I wasn't forced by my family or anyone. But it was suggested. So I'm in this conference room with these people I don't know, and my mom and dad. There are like 8 people in the room. They had all these rules that I had to follow. Like, my feet had to be firmly planted on the ground. My hands had to be palm up in her hands. I couldn't break eye contact with the prayer warrior. My mouth had to be open at all times so spirits could leave my body, the demons could leave me. If I were to hesitate, they would have taken it as a sign of the demon refusing to go along. I have 3 people standing behind me. I have one person holding this arm. I have another person holding this arm, and then one person with a hand on my neck and a hand on my head. I have the prayer warrior with a person on each side of sitting next to her. She's holding both hands, a person's holding hand, a person's holding hand. My mom and dad standing behind the prayer warrior directly facing me. This is the 8 people. I had to list first and last names of people I ever had sexual contact with. I said like 3 fake names because I wasn't about to out someone. Because like, what if I said someone that they knew? So I made up fake names, and the prayer warrior was like, he's lying. There's more. He's not telling the truth. And I was just like, oh shit, how does she know this? So I said the real names. And they were names that my family knew. And my dad's face is red, my mom's crying. They tried to get me to speak in tongues. Like, you just don't speak in tongues. It has to be a divine thing for you to speak in tongues. Being taught that growing up, and then like sitting here, and this person is like, speak in tongues. And I'm just like, this isn't even what I was raised on, but a Christian is like making me do this. They made me say hallelujah over and over and over again, hallelujah, hallelujah, and the tongues will just come. And it was just like awkward, and that felt like it went on forever. And you're like, okay, like, all healed here. I left that exorcism, that conversion, really messed up. Ooh. I felt different, really different. And I'm sorry. It really messed with me because I thought it worked. Although the situation was really awkward and I had questions about it, I left that room in conversion feeling very different and feeling good. And it messed with me because I thought that difference and that good feeling I was having meant that I was straight and fixed. The change that I felt was that I didn't have any secrets anymore. I had a new slate to live my life. And that really messed with me because I didn't know what that difference was. And it took me a long time to figure out.
Well, like a lot of people, I became suicidal. It wasn't working. That voice where I was telling myself I wasn't happy and I didn't like my life and I was trying to shove it down, that voice got really loud. It was just constant. See, you can't be fixed. Your kids don't deserve this. Obviously, you're not being a very good mom. Obviously, you're not a very good wife. And everyone would be better off without you, right? Like it's that script. It's just I think people don't realize it's in your head, and when your head becomes not a safe place to be, where can you be?
I really struggled with being suicidal a lot. I'd picked out the day I was going to do it. In high school, we had quarters, and I was going to do it like at the end of a quarter so that I could have completed all my homework assignments before killing myself.
The day came when I knew I was done. I was done. And the voice told me a plan, and it wouldn't shut up about it, and I was ready.
I was going to do it on a Thursday. I had to go to church Wednesday night. My parents made me go. And one of my close friends at the time, Rob, came up to me and just gave me a hug out of the blue and told me that he loved me. And the next day, that was the reason why I didn't go through with it.
My very best friend recognized it, what was happening, and got me help. And like 2 hours later, I was sitting in a psychologist's office getting emergency help. I mean, I was so lucky. And I was given meds, thank goodness. And for the first time in 15 years, I slept. I like really slept more than 4 hours a night.
Conversion therapy is designed to tear a person down. There's this verse in the Bible that says, you're a new creation, the old is gone and the new will come. There's this idea that like they conform you into this person, but in order to get you down to that vulnerable state, you have to deconstruct someone. And so I was deconstructed into a very vulnerable state.
I think most parents would say that they never want to harm their kids, or they would say they never want to do that to their child. But if you punish your son for not acting like a man, or your daughter for not acting like a girl or feminine enough, that's just as bad, because you're telling them that they're broken.
We will never know how many people are lost because of this. Some of them go very silently. But we do know that this industry, and it is an industry, that peddles poison and pumps out shame and self-loathing, drives people to believe that it's better off not to be here than to be out. There were survivors we talk about today, but not everybody's a survivor. There really are victims who don't make it. And all we can do is be the voice for them to save other lives in the future. And one of the hardest things I've had to do is accept the fact and realize you can't save everybody. Not everyone's going to make it. And it's a hard thing to grapple with, but it's true. And you just do the best you can, because this is a shame machine that does have victims, and it will continue to destroy people and families.
Can you explain what you are apologizing for? What are you sorry about?
Well, we're sorry for the many people who were impacted by the rhetoric, frankly, of leaders, and including myself, over the years that caused shame and hurt, promising that orientation would change and that they could expect something that they didn't come to receive. And so that's something that we're very, very sorry for, the hurt and the shame and the anxiety and the trauma that people were caused.
I was involved in Love in Action for 22 years full-time, worked with hundreds of people, and I did not see a single person who ever found freedom from same-sex attractions or freedom from their homosexuality.
It is harmful to that person's psyche, their sense of peace, their sense of well-being. I believe that my voice is best used speaking out against what I now see as a wrong.
I have very mixed emotions, and I'm incredibly conflicted when I interview former ex-gay leaders. We're talking about people who have destroyed lives, who have caused suicides, who are guilty. But I do think by having these guys come forward, we are going to save future lives. We are going to be more persuasive to parents when they're looking at the issue. And I think the voice of someone who had done this and put decades into it and then says they were brainwashed is going to help with that decision to not bring their child to this horrible place. And some of them are sincere and some of them are just trying to save their own ass. And I guess at the end of the day, we'll see which ones are sincere and which ones are about themselves. But as much as these people are abusers and victimizers, they also were abused themselves. McCrae Game, he was a guy, grew up in the deep, deep South, and he saw a billboard for an Exodus conference, and because of his situation, where he was in the world, he said, well, let me try this, let me change. And he went into it, and he did it in a very horrific, dysfunctional way.
Writing in a Facebook post, "I was wrong, please forgive me," McCrae Game, a leader of one of the biggest conversion therapy ministries in the nation, has come out of the closet admitting that he is gay.
McCrae says his attraction to the church, but also to men, directly defied one another. He would go on to create Hope for Wholeness, an organization that's policy statement says it helps people seek, quote, freedom from homosexuality.
So we're headed to South Carolina. When I went through conversion therapy, it was through an affiliate of the Hope for Wholeness Network. So this guy, McCrae, was indirectly involved in that. I mean, he was the one training a lot of these conversion therapists and these pastors. You know, I don't know what it's going to be like to interact with someone who was so directly involved in something that had such a negative impact on me. I don't know, it'll be interesting for sure.
Welcome to Hope for Wholeness. My name is McCrae Game, and today's lesson is the fear of being known.
Well, hello. Thank you for coming by. Man, thank you for bringing that in. That was perfect timing. How about come in and let me show you around the office? Well, this is my office where I do counseling and I work out of every day.
In the 20 years that I was in ministry, I never considered myself to be practicing conversion therapy.
So come on back in here and let's sit down and let me show you or talk about what it is that we do.
I was not and am not a therapist. I did kind of coaching or lay counseling.
You know, the clients sit in this seat and I sit in that seat, and we get to hear people's stories. We get to hear them, pray with them, share our stories with them.
When I got started, I just saw it as me sharing my story. I did not see it becoming what it became. Confess your sin to Him. I didn't have anybody that accepted or encouraged homosexuality in my life. And when I went to my first Exodus conference, I had had a one-time sexual fall with someone. My wife was with me. She did not know about the fall at the time. So I was there really desperate. They had said that so many people come through this and they never tell their story. The speaker said, people fight so hard to come out of homosexuality and tell no one. And so I really felt like I had heard the voice of God say, this is what I have called you to.
So this is my ordination Bible, and I was ordained to work in ex-gay ministry.
And then I've got this banner that I would throw over a podium. We were Truth Ministry from 1999 up until 2013. Have a picture of me with Joseph Nicolosi and Joe Dallas. And then this is the last Exodus Leadership Conference before Exodus was closed down.
I had gone to pretty much every Exodus leadership conference for 20 years.
Or discovering a new
I
place.
found out a month before Exodus was closing that they were closing, before anybody else did other than a couple of board members of Exodus. I took a vehicle down to Florida and I weighted down this vehicle with the archives of Exodus. And so I created a network to replace it. So the second Exodus closed, we opened and we took their place. We had annual conferences that would travel around the country. We had support groups. I did one-on-one counseling. We had a bookstore. We had a big Facebook group that everybody was in. Then we had separate groups for just ex-gay men, for youth, for wives, for women, for leaders. And then we had administrators manage those groups because there was so much constant activity 24/7 around the world. We created the only video series and workbook curriculum in the world. If there was an aspect of ex-gay ministry, I made sure that we covered it.
No matter how hard times were, the one thing we did right was we never gave up. We encourage you to make such a commitment to God and to yourself. Another way to stay encouraged.
I was the ex-gay world's face. I enjoyed being that person because I believed so much in what I was doing.
This chair, if it is not filled by you, this event will not be the same.
If you haven't registered for the conference, you need to do that today.
I never allowed myself to think that I was gay.
After being saved and leaving homosexuality, I was like a sponge, soaking up all God had for me.
And that's what the ex-gay or conversion therapy world does to people. They'll say they're same-sex attracted or they're a former homosexual.
If you have same-sex attraction, you're gay, period. That's what the world says.
You see, I believed the lie. I thought I was gay, so I felt justified having sex with other men.
What they mean is they have come to control it.
Let someone, a trusted friend, an accountability group, a pastor, know about the area that you're striving to abstain from on a weekly basis to answer for what you've done about that area.
And many of them deny it to the point that they're just not sexual at all. They're brainwashed.
That we do, and you can...
I counseled hundreds of people over the years. If I had only met that person once, there's a very good chance I don't remember them and don't remember what I told them. The worst that I ever did was explaining the triadic model of mother, father, child, and I was very arrogant with it. I would not ask you to tell me about your childhood. I would tell you about your childhood. Some people would cry while I would explain it to them. They would be like, oh my gosh, you are explaining my life to me. But other people would get angry at me because they had great relationships with their parents. They loved their parents. And here I was laying blame at their parents. I believed that people understanding how they think and feel and came about these thoughts would help them to be able to live life according to their faith. I had a young man who reached out to me that was a former client of mine. And he said, you had me write down all of my fantasies and, did you ever get sexually aroused when you had me do this? And I said to him, I don't want to argue with you. I don't remember ever asking anyone to do something like that because I consider that extremely inappropriate. I did ask some very personal questions that were overtly, I don't think they were perverse, but maybe the person did think they were perverse. I was just trying to understand what type of person I'm dealing with. Now, I would, ask people, do you masturbate? Do you fantasize while you masturbate? But I would not ask them what they fantasized about. Would I ask them about what type of person they found attractive? If I did that, I don't remember doing that. I would never allow myself to have inappropriate thoughts. If I had a very attractive client in my office, I would say to them just to help myself with it, not because I was being triggered, but I would say, you're a very attractive young man. Do you realize how attractive you are? I wouldn't cross that line. And if I heard about people crossing that line, I mean, it's inappropriate, but you don't know what is happening in someone's office unless you go and sit in their chair.
A picture around here somewhere.
You know, when I started Truth Ministry, I was quite the zealot. I remember a sweet man. He came to me on his 80th birthday, and he confessed to me habitual masturbation to gay porn. And I told him if he didn't get his life right before he died, he was going to go to hell. Those words haunt me. Because he did do everything I told him to do. He passed away before I could snap out of that zealotism I was in at the time. I was still in ministry when I snapped out of that because I stopped telling people that. It was pornography. But it was easy for me to say because at the time I wasn't struggling with pornography. But what did I get fired for? Pornography. At a board meeting, they kind of had a little bit of an intervention with me to help me with my addiction to pornography. I was not stopping my behavior. So they came in the office and escorted me out of the building. That was extremely humiliating and painful. That pain, I'm now thankful for because it helped me snap out of that person I was for 26 years.
McCrae Game says he taught gay people how to suppress their sexuality for years.
I'm sorry for 20 years of telling you to repress your homosexuality. I wasn't able to do it successfully, and I don't think anybody can. Me sharing the truth and the reality of not just my past, it's not about me. It's about whether I participated in it or not. This is a harmful practice that needs to end. So I am doing everything I can to talk to people. I get a lot of hate mail, but I respond to all of them. Several are former clients that were honestly angry. I said to one of them, I don't remember saying that, but if I said that, I was a first-class asshole. Please forgive me. Not everybody feels like that I harmed them. A lot of people are going, I don't know why you're apologizing. You really helped me.
I'll be apologizing, I'm sure, for the rest of my life.
I was on the Daily Blast. I was waiting in the queue, and there were 5 people discussing me, talking about all the suicides that I am responsible for.
Men like him have caused many young gay, lesbian, trans, bi children to commit suicide.
Yes. I appreciate that he's come out and he's spoken his truth, but like you said, what about all of those children that have harmed themselves, that have killed themselves?
No one killed themselves because of me in the organization that I have ever heard of. We always dealt with suicide very seriously. If anybody started even talking self-negative, we would deal with it right away. We understood that we're dealing with some people that really hate themselves because we were this organization that represented the very thing that they were doing, repressing their ability to be able to accept themselves as homosexual. We were the ones who did that. We were doing this to them. I believe the ex-gay phenomenon and conversion therapy causes mental illness and causes these suicidal thoughts. It causes a very warped sense of being.
Do you feel responsible for any of those thoughts?
I was responsible. I am responsible. I mean, I created the organization. I created the slogan. I created this beautiful website. I created these amazing conferences that people love to come to. And so I am responsible for so much of that. But I'm not solely responsible. we have a culture, a global culture, that refuses to allow people to accept themselves. It was always my intention to help people.
You know, I think about questions that I asked myself many years ago, and I'm sure Alan did. Is change possible? Is there hope for me? What direction am I going in life?
I know that in my being self-delusional and myopic, that I harmed some people. I played a role that created this world. I have a lot to make up for.
After leaving, there's just a lot of mixed feelings. There are some ways in which he took responsibility, but in other ways it felt like he was just a guy who was angry at the organization that he founded, angry at the board of directors for firing him. I'm glad that he's found some sort of comfort for himself, but I can't help but think about all the people who are dead or have PTSD based on what this guy did. And while we obviously want everyone to live their best life, it's like, this guy still hurt a lot of people. Even just like scrolling through his Facebook and stuff, you can tell he's really enjoying the attention he's getting. But at the same time, he has a very important perspective, because it's hearing it from the horse's mouth that it's bullshit. I am thankful that he's coming out and that he's saying these things, because they need to be said.
I am the talk of the town now.
But at the same time, it's like you're saying the right things, but for the wrong reasons.
After I went through the exorcism, I had to agree to meet with pastors pretty much every day for like 2 weeks. I got to my 4th session with a one-on-one with a pastor. He was like, if you continue on in this lifestyle, you'll never be successful, you'll never find love, you'll never find happiness, you'll always be miserable and in turmoil. Things will always be in turmoil for you in your life. And things just didn't feel right, and I just knew I had to get away. So I stopped him, and I bought my plane ticket to New York City. One day, I was like, this is it. I've got to go. I put it on the refrigerator and told my mom and dad, like, here's your 2-month notice, that I'm gonna go do me. I need to be in New York. I have to. And so I went.
I realized, little things started opening up, and I realized I don't actually know if this therapy works. I bought bath towels on Google last week that I looked at the reviews more than I ever looked at the reviews of this therapy. I don't know if it works. And I've spent thousands of dollars on it. And at the time, the Me Too movement was happening, and the Brett Kavanaugh hearings were happening, and we were getting these headlines.
1 in 5 women will be raped at some point in their lives.
And I finally connected the dots and realized most American women are not gay. A violent assault does not mean that you're gay. And it was a massive mind-opening experience to realize that. Yeah, I wasn't just a victim of that at 15, I was now a victim of that again at 37, because it was put to me that that is what broke me. So I need to heal from that, and I need to embrace who I am.
I had found out that a few of my other friends were also seeing my conversion therapist. When we kind of compared notes, it made me feel even more so that my suspicions were right. This was not something that was ever going to change. I just told him that I felt like he was getting more out of our sessions than I was. He felt like he needed to do this to be right with God, but I didn't need to be included in that. But I think he kind of had a look on his face like, you'll be back. He knew that my parents were very much pushing me to be there, but that was the last time that I went. In the fall of 2019, I went out to coffee with my parents. For the first time, my dad apologized
before sending me to conversion therapy, he said, we just thought we were doing the right thing and we thought we were getting you the care that you needed. That's why I really don't have anger towards my parents, because I feel like they were manipulated by the church in a lot of ways that I don't even know if they recognize. I do believe that my parents always wanted what's best for me. And I think if they knew then what they know now, I don't think they would have sent me to conversion therapy.
I know that everything that I have gone through was solely a devastated parent from hearing that their kid was raped and molested. My mom and dad have apologized since then from making me go through the exorcism. However, we still don't see eye to eye on homosexuality. They still think it's a choice. They still think it's a sin. They just don't believe what I went through was a thing I should have gone through.
Strong emotions at an Assembly committee meeting today about a bill designed to protect minors from being forced into controversial treatment, therapies to change their sexual orientation.
It was 2013 that this push to end this practice really took off. It's a form of abuse being inflicted on children, and it's got to stop. The first bill was in California that became law, and I was the executive director of an organization called Garden State Equality at the time. So we took the bill up in New Jersey and became the second state in the union to pass this.
The New Jersey Governor Chris Christie plans to sign a bill today barring gay conversion therapy.
It's really taken off in the last few years.
Conversion therapy for gay and transgender teens may be banned in the state of Oregon.
Vermont's governor expanded protections for the LGBT community.
State Senate passed that bill unanimously today. It passed the House overwhelmingly last week.
What these bills do, on top of making sure that licensed practitioners, people licensed by the state, are not doing this to young people, it's all based on stopping it with minors. It gets the word out that this exists. And passing this legislation tells parents, good-intentioned parents, that this isn't okay. Having the narrative in the press and in society, it sends the message that this is harmful. And I think that public education piece is so vital. We are attempting to make sure that this type of legislation is passed in all 50 states. Obviously, we have states that are easier to do that in. We can't completely ban the practice. You've got religious practitioners who aren't charging money, who are going to do this regardless. So on that piece, keeping licensed practitioners, keeping state dollars and federal dollars from going to this, it's a protection more than a ban.
It's law, Ken.
We use the word protection because it's truly an attempt to protect young people.
Is not only archaic, but it's wrong.
I think we should ban it everywhere possible to have the imprimatur of government say it doesn't work. I support the laws because they send a great message. But the truth is, the laws have not shut down a single organization. There was a lull after Exodus International closed in 2013. But enough time has gone by where they are staging a comeback now. And they've relaunched with the Changed Movement, the Freedom March, Restored Hope Network. These groups were hiding behind the First Amendment and saying, well, it's our religious right to try to change people.
This proposed law prohibits the free exercise of religion and abridges the freedom of speech.
How could California pass a law to prohibit questioning, to prohibit counseling?
Talk therapy is talk therapy. There's no danger in talking.
They don't use the term conversion therapy or reparative therapy now because of the laws. They try to avoid that, even though that's exactly what they're doing.
I'm Dr. Joseph Nicolosi, Jr., clinical psychologist. I wrote the reintegrative protocol. We have a client who feels conflicted about his sexual attractions and wants to explore what they mean and where they came from.
Every time they talk about your child background and how you became gay, that's what conversion therapy is.
My clients consistently report having distant, detached, critical fathers, intrusive mothers, and they themselves were boys who were temperamentally sensitive.
So they are doing it. Another way to avoid these laws is to go online and have Zoom sessions. In essence, these laws are obsolete. You cannot stop conversion therapy because of online and Zoom any more than you can stop tax evasion as long as you have tax shelters in places like Panama or the Cayman Islands. No different. And so it creates a whole new danger that's much harder to regulate. And therefore it is as dangerous, if not more now than ever, because of this. So what they're doing now is they're not pushing this as much in the mainstream media, but they have not stopped and they've intensified with Christian media.
The Freedom March is set to kick off in Washington, D.C. The march will feature the sharing of testimonies by men and women who left behind the homosexual, bisexual, and transgender lifestyle.
Last year we had people show up from all over the country to the first Freedom March, and this year we have hundreds of people showing up to the Freedom March. So we're so excited at the community and the family that it's built for people that left those lifestyles.
Hello, my name is Jeffrey McCall. I left a transgender lifestyle, living that for years.
I'm a former homosexual.
Former homosexual.
Former lesbian. Former lesbian.
Former bisexual.
Former lesbian. Former lesbians. Former homosexual.
And that's what they're doing today. They experience so much humiliation by their failures in mainstream media that a lot of it is this whole underground network. It's more underground today than it was 10 years ago or 15 years ago. One of the greatest fallacies I had in my activism was I thought there was a finish line.
Homosexuality is not a choice, but people can choose to love and accept people for who they are, not who they want them to be.
I thought this would be over. We put Exodus out of business, but love went out under. We won. Let's go out and celebrate. There is no finish line. But what you can do is save individuals. You can make sure that they don't go in the first place. Or if they do enter it, instead of being 10 years, maybe they're in there for a year and they come out. By making sure people have the right messages, to know that what they're hearing is a lie, they can be happy. You can shut down individual ministries with scandals and get the message out that they're a joke. You can speak with the media and make sure the coverage is accurate. But the idea that they're going to go away through these actions, no, there's always going to be somebody, some charlatan, who takes advantage of somebody's desperation and vulnerability, offering a product that doesn't exist with results that can never happen. It's fraud. As long as there's prejudice and discrimination, there's going to be a market for this. As long as someone's convinced that they're going to hell, that they're sick and sinful, there's always going to be someone who takes advantage of this person. While these groups will be around forever, we have drastically reduced the market because now messages are getting out and people are coming out of the closet. And there are a lot of resources out there where people can see the history of these organizations. People know the truth. You can't save everybody. It's hard to accept that. But you can help a lot of people. You're out doing a film right now. You were once in a car going to love one out. Exhibit A. People can change, all right, but not in the way they're selling. People can realize that they're being fed a lie and come out and live an open and honest life and live their truth.
In 2016 was the first time that I felt like I was able to really be out. It wasn't like a dramatic coming out process. It was really just kind of a series of one-on-one conversations. It was weird because a lot of people knew that I'll be like, I'm gay. And they're like, yeah, we know, but you're like, and I'm like, no, like I'm gay. Like I want to date guys. I want to be in healthy relationships. And I want to know what that's like.
The first thing I realized was that there was no way I was ever going to be intimate with my husband again. That's not fair to him. That's not fair to me. And it's really not fair to our kids. That was able to open the door of, actually, divorce is not a failure. What would be a failure is to model to my kids that it's okay to pretend for your entire adult life that you're someone you're not. That would be failure. So everything like religion and sexuality went on the back burner, got a lawyer, file for divorce, move out into my own home for the first time since I was 20 years old. I had my own master bedroom and my own master bathroom. I think anyone who's lived in a mixed orientation marriage can tell you that the master bedroom is an icky place. It's hard to feel safe there. And so here I was in my own master bedroom for the first time, feeling so safe. And that's when I was able to put it to God. Okay, I know I'm gay. And every time I say it, I feel more connected to the earth. Like, this is literally how I'm gonna stay alive, is by embracing this concept. So I know I'm gay, God. Do you want me to be that gay Mormon who goes to church, hoping that someday the prophets will change their minds? Or am I done with this path? And I'm very lucky that I got a very clear answer right away. You are done. And I felt like this shift, this clunk. I was done. 20 years of really a lot of work and a lot of sacrifice and a whole framework of belief, a way of knowing that God loved me. It was all done in that moment.
When I moved to New York, I moved there to become an actor, to be on Broadway and live out that dream. It didn't happen the way I thought it would. So I was just like, I'm an artist, I have to create, I want to perform, and that's how drag came about for me. Performing has been the escape. Drag has been to push myself to be more than taboo about everything that I have ever grown up with. Just being in drag alone is a protest against how I was raised. When I became a drag queen and started working with my community, my tribe found me. My chosen family is a very queer family. My people that I consider like brothers and sisters that I talk to every day, and we do Thanksgiving together, we do Christmases together. They're not my real family, but they're my chosen family group of people that we've all made up, and we have each other's backs. I've been very blessed in my life with the opportunities that have come my way. I have a fiance. Oh, why does it always make me so emotional? Everything that I told I couldn't have, I have. I have love. I have success. I have a chosen family that is wild about me, and I love them. I'm just so lucky.
Growing up as far as I can remember, I would stay with my minister grandparents, and every night before bed we would always pray. One of the last prayers that was always said was to the girl who would be my future wife, and for God to be with her and to protect her. That prayer has been prayed for I don't know how long, probably up until this day, who knows? I know that those prayers were heard, and they had to be for you. There's no way anyone could convince me otherwise. I can't wait to see what our future has in store for us in a love like ours. If it's anything like the last 7 years, it's going to be amazing. Be my husband already.
I now pronounce you husbands, you may kiss.
I definitely had that pastor's voice in the back of my mind saying, you will not have this. But I'm so glad that I let that go. I opened myself up, and things are pretty great.
There are lots of mantras in ex-gay ministry, and one of them I remember was the opposite of homosexuality isn't heterosexuality, it's holiness. Looking back on that, it means what's the opposite of holiness? It's to be gay. To be gay is the furthest you can be from God. But it's not. One thing that conversion therapy people will say is that oh, it's just sex, and it's not. Your sexual identity is a core part. It affects all your relationships, the way you look at life. I feel like conversion therapy changed so many things about myself. Sent me deep into depression. Made it very hard for me to be able to accept love from people. It changed how I saw the world. The one thing it did not ever change was my sexual orientation. If you think you're helping your kid by doing this, you're not. By not accepting your kid's sexual identity or gender identity, you are risking their life. You're gambling with their life. That's not something you want to roll the dice on. I am still on a journey of learning to accept and love myself. I still have so much work to do to unpack in that area. Coming out is scary, but it's been one of the best things I've ever done. And for anyone who is in conversion therapy and anyone who comes from that type of background and just feels like I can't be out, it's really fucking hard and scary, but it's worth it. Being able to be who you are is worth it.